Welcome to your next tape of the Joe Verde training program, How to Close More Sales. This program was designed by Joe to help you close more sales, overcome your customers' objections, stay off price on the lot, and hold gross. There is also homework and a quick quiz for you to fill out at the completion of each tape in this series. And now, let's begin. Here's Joe.
All right, welcome back. We got you ready, we got you organized, we talked about the skills you need to develop. We've answered some of the most common questions on closing and objections. It's time to learn how to close. It's time to learn some of those closing questions that we talked about. Now, from here on out in your workbook, this workbook is going to be filled with scripts. And when I use the word scripts, I know a lot of people say, I don't like scripts. What you need to understand is that almost everything you say now is already scripted. The problem is, when you and I started selling cars, remember that little group of people we hung around with in the very beginning? The 6-car guy, the 8-car guy, the 10-car guy? Who'd you learn your selling scripts from? Who'd you learn these responses from when somebody says, what's my trade worth? I believe the 6-car guy taught us to say, well, Bob, depends on what kind of condition it's in. The 8-car guy taught us to respond to, what are my payments going to run? Well, it depends on how much you put down. These people taught us the scripts that they knew. But the problem is, if you learn those scripts, how many cars will you sell? I was listening to a speaker one time, J. Douglas Edwards, probably the best speaker I've ever listened to, an old dead guy. And he was talking about scripts, and he was talking to a group of salespeople. Now, in any high-ticket item, cars, computers, copiers, in any of those professions, the average salesperson is in that $25,000 to $35,000 a year range. And he was talking to a group of copier, real estate, insurance, cars, computer salespeople. And he asked the group, he was talking about scripts, and that group responded the same way you and I do. Nah, I don't like scripts. And he said, you know what? You guys can keep saying the words you're saying. You can keep using the scripts you're using. Or here's a script book, and you can learn these words, and it'll be worth $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 instead. The point he was trying to make is there's some better words to use than some of those we were taught. We need to have a better script when somebody says, what's my trade worth? We need to have a better script or a better response when they say, what are my payments going to run? We need to give the proper response that lets us take that next step. We don't want to get bogged down in a hum-haw about trades out here on the lot. Remember, we said we needed to bypass that. There's 5 questions on page 35, and that's what we're going to talk about on this section. The 5 questions that you need to learn, and you need to practice, drill, and rehearse these so well that you don't have to think about them. These need to just be conditioned responses. The first one there is a tie down or tag on. We want to learn how to generate a yes response. We need to get people to respond positively whenever we need them to. It's like we were talking before. If it's a beautiful day out and I say, Bob, pretty out, isn't it? He'll respond with, yeah. If he walked on the lot and said, boy, I like that shade of blue. 20 minutes later, if I say, boy, isn't that a pretty shade of blue? He'll respond with a positive. Now, the reason we need to do those, we need as many, those are called minor commitments. And we want to get as many minor commitments as we can throughout our presentation. There's some other things we have to learn to do with questions. We were talking earlier about presentations. Let's say that this circle is our time we spend with our customer presenting. Now, we found that people only care about 20% of the features on the car. So we have to investigate to find those features. So we've got to do our investigation. We found that 80% of our selling is done in this presentation on 20% of those features. We also found out that we needed to build some rapport. We've got to make friends with people. We've got to investigate, and we also need to start closing or getting some of these minor commitments, getting people to say yes. Now, you and I were taught some questions, but most of them were wrong questions. They were questions that hurt our chances of selling. When we're building rapport, an open-ended question is fine. Now, some open-ended questions are who, what, when, where, why, how. Where will you take your first trip in your new car? That's a good open-ended question. Well, I'm going to head down to the desert. If we're trying to investigate and we're trying to find out use, we don't want to say, who's the car for? That's an open-ended question, and it leaves us open for the wrong answer. And again, how many times has somebody said, I don't know, we're just looking. So when we investigate, we want to use an either-or question, the second type of question here. So we need to learn how to use yes questions and either-or questions and open-ended questions. As we go through our investigation step and building rapport step, my goal as I go through rapport and investigate, and these work real well together. These just kind of tie in together. I'll investigate and I'll say, Bob, who's the car for, you or Betty? And he says it's going to be for me. I've gathered one bit of information with an investigative question. Now I would ask, how are you going to use it, business or pleasure? He says, a little bit of both, a little bit of business and a little bit of pleasure. Now I'd see if I can find some ways to build rapport here. Again, these tie in together real well. Bob, when you say pleasure, you talking about little trips around town or vacations, things like that? He says, well, a little bit of both. We like to take little 3-day trips. Opportunity to build rapport. Oh, really? Where do you go? Well, we like to go up to Yosemite. You know, it's really pretty up there this time of year. We normally take 2 or 3 days, stay at the lodge down there in the valley, and then we come back. Boy, that sounds great. Now we need to bring it back to investigating. Boy, that sounds great. When you guys take those trips, do you normally take everybody with you or just ride by yourself? No, we just ride by ourselves. Just the wife and I. We don't normally take the kids. And I didn't even ask, do you guys prefer a 5-speed or an automatic? I want a 5-speed. You know, speaking of 5-speeds, were you guys talking about a car or truck? You know, we're kind of open. A truck might be nice. Oh, really? And do you carry a lot of things with you or just a truck because it's kind of neat to have room for stuff now and then? He says, well, I carry some stuff now and then like everybody else. He said, but I do, in my business now and then, I need a ladder to do something. I'm always seem like I'm carrying something. And do you prefer short bed or long bed? It's not kind of like that short bed. Standard cab or extra cab? Well, I prefer having the extra room. And you guys prefer, you know, a lot of equipment, or you just want the basics, power steering, power brakes, and air conditioning? No, we just kind of want the basics, although power windows would be kind of nice. So I'm going through in my investigation, finding out how he's going to use it, what he's going to do with it, and I'm using either or questions to do that. When I get a chance, I'll shoot over here and build rapport. Oh, really, Bob? What kind of business do you have? Well, I'm in real estate, but you know, I have to carry signs around now and then. I have to make little repairs on a house. Oh, really? What company do you work for? Oh, I work for ABC Real Estate. Oh, you're kidding. My cousin works for them. So I'd use some opportunities to build rapport. I'll go back between rapport and investigating. But my goal is to gather as much information as I can about these folks. Now, when we talk about getting minor commitments with this first question, number 1, tie-downs and tag-ons, I said before in one of the other tapes that we only want to ask questions that we already know the answer to. I don't want to test the waters with a boy, that sure is pretty, isn't it, question if I don't know that the answer is already going to be yes. So now that I've gathered this information, I've used my either-or questions, I've controlled the conversation, I've gathered the information, now I use my yes questions to go back and pick up on it. Now, Bob, you did say the car was for you, didn't you? Yes, I did. And Betty's going to be driving it some of the time, but most of the time you're going to drive it, is that right? Yeah. And if I remember right, you're going to use it for business and pleasure too, aren't you? Yes, I am. So I investigate, build rapport, and then I use these to go tie down all this information. Let's say he said safety was important. So, Bob, you're going to spend a lot of time in the car, and, you know, we kind of take disc brakes for granted, but they stop you a lot quicker. And as much time as you and Betty are going to be driving this thing, I know safety was one of your main concerns, wasn't it? Yes, it is. For information, 45 of these yeses in 45 minutes will equal about a 75% closing ratio. 45 yeses, 45 minutes, about a 75% closing ratio. When we look at why, are we not leading them to the sale with each one of these yes responses? Now, you guys did say you're going to spend a lot of time on the highway, didn't you? Yeah. And, Bob, you had a bad back, too, didn't you? Yeah, I did. And that seat sure was comfortable, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. You know, those trips back and forth to Yosemite, that'll sure make that drive a lot better, won't it? Yeah, it will. And from what you've told me that you're carrying, this bed's got enough room in it, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, it sure does. And, Bob, you know, Ford had you and your family in mind when they designed this new truck. Not only did they put disc brakes on the front, they put safety glass in every window so that the occupants would be protected in case you had a collision, and that's kind of nice to know, isn't it? Well, yeah, Joe, you know, it really is. And this will pull those loads you're talking about, too, won't it? Yeah, it sure will. And we use these questions to lead us to a close. So we need to know a combination of open-ended questions, either-or questions, to build rapport and investigate, and then we start using these yes questions to establish the value in owning this truck. I gather information, then I say, Bob, come here, let me show you a truck I think you'll be interested in. And we walk over and I say, Bob, now you're going to be driving it most of the time, right? And you're going to use it for those trips, aren't you? And that seat sure is comfortable, isn't it? Now, when I get down to selling a truck, I'm only selling this truck. I'm not selling a row of trucks. I'm not selling one of those pickup trucks we got. I said, Bob, based on what you told me, this is the truck for you, and let me tell you why. I need to focus my presentation on this truck. I need to use all this information I've gathered with these either-or questions and my rapport to go back and use my tie-downs and my tag-ons to help lead me through the sale step by step. Does that kind of make sense? We're just taking it a little slower than you might have taken it in the past. In the past, a guy came on a lot and said, I want to buy a truck. You said, great, we got 7 of them over here. And we jumped from here to the presentation. We didn't build rapport, we didn't investigate, and now all of a sudden we start presenting this pickup truck without knowing his buying motives or anything else. We say, oh, Bob, the truck's great. You know you're going to love it. It's the best truck on the market. Besides that, we got some rebates. And you go into a presentation on price. What do you guys want to spend? Well, gee, I don't know. You know, we're just kind of out looking. And then you start soliciting objections because you skip the steps. We were talking about skipping steps. That's what gets you into the trouble. So build rapport, investigate, and then we use these as we present the product to take us step by step. The third one down here is an involvement question. An involvement question is a question you ask that forces somebody to take mental ownership. I want to force as much mental ownership on the customer as I can throughout my presentation. Bob, when you guys go up to Yosemite, you're going to put everything in the back of the truck or behind the front seats? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but mentally, doesn't he take all the stuff he normally carries, put it either in the back or behind the seat, and then respond to my question? Remember, if I ask a question, people are taught to respond. So it's a forced response. He's going to say, well, does this little mental arithmetic there, and he says, you know, I'm going to put everything behind the seat, except, of course, for the bass boat, and we're going to put that in the back of the truck. Oh, really? And now we can go back and build rapport. You go bass fishing up there? Oh, yeah, we stop at Bass Lake on the way up there. Really nice up there. Oh, yeah, you know, I used to go up there all the time. And you visit, and you talk, and you build rapport, and you investigate, and you continue closing and closing and closing and closing. You take it step by step. One of the reasons we want to use these involvement questions is before you buy anything, before you bought that watch, before you bought your ring, before you bought your planner that I see there in front of you, before you did any of that, you took mental ownership before you ever took the money out of your pocket and paid the clerk for it. It's the same with a car. People don't take this car home until they've mentally bought it, and then they go sign their name in finance. So these involvement questions force ownership, and we'll go through some of these. Sharp angle questions help us get extra commitments, and I'll go through that one when we get there. And the last, number 5, assumptive statements, questions, and closes. We have to use an assumptive closing method. I have to assume you're there to buy. I need to make a lot of assumptive statements, a lot of positive statements throughout my presentation. Bob, you're going to love your truck. Just a positive statement. Gets me another little check mark. This will sure be fun on those trips, won't it? Positive statement, threw a question in there. Gets me another positive response. This thing gets great gas mileage. Just another positive statement that gets me a little bit extra value. When I get so much extra value and so many extra commitments here, when I've done my job and then some, closing this sale is a piece of cake. The way you and I were taught to do it, we go out here and we don't do any of this. We go straight from here to a presentation, we talk about price, and we go straight to a close. We skip almost all the steps, and then we wonder why this turns into a grind in here. You should be able to close this sale step by step by step. And I can't stress how valuable this yes question and these either-or questions are. Of everything we've talked about on tape so far, yes questions and either-or questions are the most important. Some of you heard the story, and some of you have seen some of our videos, you've heard some of our audio tapes, you've been to some of my workshops, and you've heard some of the stories. In fact, the manager called me not too long ago, and we were talking, and he said, you know, my guys have been through your tapes so many times, they got those stories down pat. I said, great, Bob, do they have these scripts down pat? I said, no, they haven't learned the scripts, but they got the stories. When I share a story, it's because it impacts the point I'm trying to make. It's like these yes questions. You get led into a yes question close, and you're in it so far you can't get out of it, and it comes silently, it's deadly. My wife and I were walking through Nordstrom's one day, and again, you don't hear these yes question closes coming. We're walking through hand in hand, and you know, we have to go through the women's section with our wives so that they'll go through the computer store with us in the hardware department. And again, you don't even hear these things coming. We're walking through the department store, and all of a sudden she looked over at an outfit and she said, boy, now isn't that pretty? It's one of those tie downs we're talking about. And I said, yeah, that's pretty nice. I wouldn't pay any attention to it. And we took another step, and she said, boy, that'd look good on me, wouldn't it? And I said, yeah, I suppose it probably would. We took another step, and she said, whoa, since this thing's on sale, I should probably try it on real quick then, shouldn't I? And I said, yeah, I guess you should. I don't know, whatever you want to do. And then she came out a few minutes later with this good-looking outfit on, And she said, boy, I look great in this, don't I? You're done. Just pull out your money and pay the people because you can't get out of it. You move too far into a yes question close. Imagine, customer came to buy. They've gone yes, 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 45 times in 45 minutes. Now you close. With all these yeses, doesn't it sound like? Couldn't you say, Bob, it sounds to me like we found the perfect truck. Were you going to put that bumper on today, or you want to bring it back in on Thursday? And let's offer them an either or closing question. Sounds like we found the perfect truck. Do you want to register it in your name or Betty's name? Or sounds like we found the perfect truck. You want to put the bumper on today or bring it in on Thursday? Doesn't that just flow in with all the other questions you've been asking? Bob, sounds like we found the perfect truck. Come on, let's get rid of this paperwork and get you out of here so you can start enjoying it. You want to put that CD in today or bring it back in on Wednesday? And we ask a closing question. If he says put the CD in today, what do you agree to do with the truck? Buy it, because we led into it with yes questions. We'll talk more about closing and types of closing, but this is basically a summary close. This is just a summary close. I gather information on the lot, and I go back and summarize everything I've learned. Well, you did say this, didn't you? Yeah. And you said that, didn't you? Yep. And you said this and this and this, didn't you? Yep. And you like it, don't you? Yep. Sounds like found a perfect car. Now, is there any pushing and shoving when I'm asking questions like this? You don't go through this like I'm going through this in this lightning round here on video. When you're out with a customer, this is slowed down. This is conversational questioning. You're just visiting. You might be leaning on a car over here, and you say, boy, that sure is pretty, isn't it? He says, yeah, it is. And Bob, sit down there in that seat. I want to show you something. He sits down in the seat. You might have your foot on the doorstep there, and you say, boy, that thing's comfortable, isn't it? And he says, yeah, you know, that really is. I really like this leather. And Bob, you said you spent a lot of time in the car, didn't you? Yeah, I sure do. And boy, on those long trips, won't that seat be a lot more comfortable? Yeah, it sure will. How hard should it be to sell these people something that they came to buy? As long as we ask the right questions, say the right things. Closing. You don't close the sale here with one big question. A lot of people think step number 7, close the sale. Technically, you ask the closing question, maybe it's step number 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, but you closed the sale. You started here. It starts with a good first impression. It starts with the right greeting. It starts with building rapport and investigating, presenting, demonstrating, proving it with your evidence manual. You're closing from the time you get up in the morning. If you get up with a good attitude, you closing sales that day. If you get up with a rotten attitude, you're hurting yourself that day. Everything you do and everything you say either moves you closer to the sale or further away from it. And I think what I like best about closing this way, it's non-confrontational, nobody gets mad at you, is I've closed sales this way, and you'll find this happens to you too. People come up to you after the sale. I can't tell you how many people have come up and said, Joe, thanks for not pushing me into this. We appreciate you letting us make our own decision. You just smile and you say, yeah, Bob, it was a lot more fun that way, wasn't it? And he doesn't get it, and he gives you another positive response. Make selling fun. Make it easy. Learn these questions. Let's go through these step by step on page 36. Let's start with this tie down or tag on, and let's fill in some of the blanks. Number 1, yes questions, tie downs and tag ons. Now, we use all of these questions for specific reasons. The tie down, we use these to build value. A, to build value. We use these yes questions to build value. Every yes response we get adds a little bit more value. So we want as many positive responses as we can get. Now, couldn't you get people to say yes almost any time you wanted them to? I mean, that would be pretty easy to do, wouldn't it? I mean, if you spent some time investigating, you gathered all the information, wouldn't you just go back and ask questions of what you learned? Doesn't each one of those questions also become sort of a trial close? And every time they nod their head, aren't they moving a little closer to the sale? Well, couldn't you get them to say yes almost any time you wanted them to? I mean, just take some practice, wouldn't it? You'd have to move the question around in the sentence now and then, though, wouldn't you? I mean, if you put the question at the end all the time, after a while they'd notice, wouldn't they? And then if they noticed and they caught on, they'd start to resist, wouldn't they? And we wouldn't want that, would we? And if I kept asking all these questions and putting all the questions at the end, you'd notice too, wouldn't you? And see, now you can hear all of them, can't you? But that's because I'm focusing on them now, aren't I? And my timing and my delivery has to be right too, doesn't it? I don't get to look at my notes, do I? Then it's real noticeable, isn't it? Couldn't you switch the question around and ask the question up front now and then? Doesn't that put a whole different slant on the types of questions? Since we're going to be in sales, shouldn't we learn to use these in a lot of different ways instead of just at the end of every statement? You know, if you say the same thing the same way every time, after a while people might catch on. Under A, to build value, the first one there, the seat sure is comfortable, isn't it, is at the end of the sentence. And you might want to underline isn't it. The second one there, we put the question at the beginning of the sentence. Won't this be fun on those windy mountain roads? Since you spent a lot of time in the car, didn't you say safety was important? There are the questions in the middle. These questions are real easy to remember, just isn't it, wouldn't it, couldn't it? These are just short little two-word questions. Boy, isn't it pretty out? Wouldn't it be fun taking this on those windy mountain roads? Gosh, won't you have a great time showing this off to all your friends? And they're going to love it too, aren't they? And you're going to just eat that stuff up, won't you? And they're going to wish they had one, won't they? B, we use these as trial closes. In fact, they do all three of these things at the same time. They build value and they're a trial close. It's a built-in trial close every time you get a positive response. That's why 45 yeses, 45 minutes makes such a high closing ratio. And C, we use these to close the sale. We close the sale step by step, a question at a time. Not one big old if I could, would you? Let's close it question by question, step by step. Now there's a basic script here. I've kind of already gone through it. In fact, don't try to read the scripts as we're going through the video. Go back and read those after we turn it off. Let's look at the either-or question on page 37. That second type of question. Again, the two most important questions. Yes questions, either-or questions. Page 37. The first thing we use an either-or question for, one of the things we use it for, we just talked about. We use it to investigate. I don't know if you realize it, but you make the wrong presentation about 30% of the time because you don't investigate. We don't investigate, we present the wrong car. Let's say that somebody's on their way down to the dealership to buy a new Escort. And they're on their way, they've decided to buy one, they already figured their budget, they're that 78%er and 85% decide they're going to buy it, they're on their way there to get it. It's the only reason they're coming down there. At the last red light before the Ford store, they pull up the red light and there's a Mustang convertible sitting over there. And they look over and they say, boy, no, isn't that pretty? You know, Betty, when we get down to the dealership, let's take a look at one of those. Now, they walk on the lot, you go out to greet them, and you've been through our course, so you go out and smile, and you say, welcome to ABC Motors, and you do everything right, and you say, what are you guys looking for? Car or truck? And they say, well, we want to look at, do they ask for the Escort or the Mustang convertible? I forgot. I believe they asked for the Mustang convertible. They say, we want to look at one of those Mustang convertibles. Now, in your enthusiasm, if you're not careful, you'll go straight from the curb to a car without investigating, without building rapport, without doing your job, because that's the easy thing to do. Got some excited customers, want to look at a Mustang? Sure, come on, we got 3 of them over here. Truck just dropped them off. You know, when you start presenting the Mustang convertible, you start, you get them behind the wheel, you explain everything about it, and you say, boy, isn't that nice? And they say, yeah, it really is. Why don't we take it for a ride? And they say, sure. You get back off the demonstration. You try to close, and you say, well, folks, what do you think? If we can work it out today the way you want to buy it, can we sell it to you? Now, remember, on this Escort, they're thinking $150 a month, maybe with $300 down. So they're thinking, I get away with hardly anything down and very small payments. So you say, do you like it? Oh, sure. If we can work it out the way you want to buy it, can we sell it to you? And they say, hang on a second. They get back in this little huddle and they say, Betty, what do you think? We can buy this thing for $150, should we take it? And they say, sure. So you go in here. Now you got a commitment at $150 a month. You go in here and you grind out a deal. For an hour, 2 hours, you get these people up to $175, you get them up to $200, you get them up to $210, you get them up from $300 down to $1,200 down. The problem is the payment's still $325. And you grind and you grind and you grind, you can't get together, and they say, well, we just can't do anything, and you say, well, we gave up, we tried everything we can think of. You guys are just out of your budget range. Let me show you a used Mustang. And they leave. Then I believe you go into your manager and you say something like, gosh, all the crazies are out trying to buy a Mustang convertible for $150. And then you do your follow-up and you call them back on Thursday and you say, Bob and Betty, you still interested in that Mustang convertible? And they say, nah, we bought an Escort down the street. Then I believe you go in and tell your manager, boy, it must have been a full moon on Monday. I can't believe these people. They said they wanted a convertible. They end up buying a little dumpy Escort out here. And we blame it on them. It's because you forgot to investigate. Wrong presentation at least 30% of the time because you don't investigate. I don't mean too much car, I mean wrong car. B, we need to use these investigative questions or these either-or questions to control the conversation. You use these to control the conversation. Bob, do you want to pick up your car Thursday or Friday morning? You can use these anywhere. I travel a lot, and sometimes I'm gone for a week, 2 weeks. I come back, and I've got 2 weeks' worth of white shirts to take to the laundry. Now, the problem is I generally leave again in 2 or 3 days. And if this was Monday, and I went to the laundry with my 10 white shirts and said, when can I get these back? Open-ended question. What would they tell me? It's Monday. They'd probably say something like, is Friday, Saturday, or next Tuesday okay? I won't be here next Tuesday, so I can't afford to risk that question. So I use an either-or question. I go in my 10 shirts and I say, well, I'm in kind of a hurry. Can I get these back this afternoon, or is tomorrow morning better for you? I offer them a choice, an either-or question. They generally say, whoa, I can't get these back this afternoon. Well, sounds like tomorrow then, doesn't it? How about around 10:30, 11, or would noon be better? And they said, well, gosh, that's kind of a rush. Can you give us till 2? Okay, if that's what it takes. Now I got my shirts back 7 days sooner because I didn't use an open-ended question. I used an either-or question. So you use these to control the conversation. In fact, one of the reasons you guys work your 9 to 3, 3 to 9 shift, kind of rotates like that. Let's say you're on your 9 o'clock shift at night. You're delivering a car at 9 o'clock. It hasn't been serviced. You need to detail it, and that's all that has to be done. Take them 20 minutes tomorrow morning, or an hour at the most. You could have this thing done by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But as you're delivering it, and delivering the paperwork, you can't deliver the car, you hand the guy the paperwork and you said, Bob, now we'll get your car cleaned up first thing tomorrow morning, and you use an open-ended question. When can you come back in? The average person works 8 to 5. So what does Bob tell you when you say, Bob, when can you come back in tomorrow? Generally 5 o'clock. He says, well, I'll be a little after work. And we both know if he says 5:30 that you need to be there at 4:30, and we know that he has a habit of going home and having dinner and watching Roseanne first and then calling saying, you know, I'm going to be a little late, and you hang around till 7:30 or 8. The only reason you had to do that is because you didn't control the conversation. Here, when you're delivering the car, this may sound crazy, but try it and be amazed. You're delivering the car and you say, Bob, I'll get this thing cleaned up first thing tomorrow morning. Can you stop by around 10, 10:15, or would noon be better? He's thinking 5 o'clock. He'll probably respond with, gosh, Joe, I was planning on picking it up after work. Oh, darn, Bob, I won't be here. I'm off at 3 and I've got some things I need to take care of. Could I buy us a sandwich or something, or even pick you up at lunch, or could you squeeze in on your morning break? Nah, Joe, I'll be there at lunch. Don't worry about me a sandwich. I'll pick one up on the way down. Now you get to deliver the car at lunch. You get to go home at 3. One of the biggest reasons we spend so much time working is because we don't control hardly anything. See here, it's the same thing on appointments. We use these to make appointments. We tend to hold our breath and hope people show up. Let's say it's Thursday, Wednesday, and you say, open-ended question, when can you guys come back in? And they say, well, we'll be on over the weekend sometime. You say, do you have any idea when? No, you know, just what are your hours? And they ask you what your hours are, and you hold your breath all weekend hoping they show up. And they don't most of the time. If you learn to make appointments using these either-or questions, it's easy. Same Wednesday afternoon. Bob says, we'll be back sometime this weekend. Great. Now, there's only 2 days in the weekend. Well, in California, there's 2 days. In Idaho, I think there's only 1 day. It's Saturday. In California, we have 2 days in the weekend. What are they? Saturday and Sunday. So Bob says, well, I'll come back in Saturday. There's only 2 time frames in Saturday. What are they? Morning and afternoon. Be back Saturday morning. There's only 2 time frames in Saturday morning. What are they? Early morning and late morning. So Bob, when you say come back in over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday? Saturday. Morning or afternoon? Probably in the morning. Somewhere around 9:30, 10, something like that, or more like 11:30 or 12. Joe, I'll be back. I'll tell you what, we'll be down here at 11:30. Great, I'll set a time to meet you then. Do me a favor, you're going to be a little early, a little late. Give me a call and I'll reschedule the rest of my day. Now you have an appointment, and now they may show up. D, we use an either-or question. It's the best closing question you'll ever use because it has people make a decision not on will they buy, but on a minor point. Not, Bob, will you buy it, but Bob, how'd you want it registered, your name or her name? He says, put it in her name. Didn't he just agree to buy the car? Say, Bob, sounds like this truck's going to handle all your business needs. Do you want us to put a rack in the back for that ladder, or are you just going to tie it down? He says, no, I'll just tie it down. What did he just agree to do? Buy the truck. 95, 99% of the time, you'll use an either-or question no matter what other type or technique of closing, or closing technique we're talking about. The end result will almost always be the either-or question, literally every time. Page 38, that mental ownership question. Page 38, the involvement question. Now we use this involvement question to paint mental pictures of ownership. Paint mental pictures of ownership. Who are you going to show this off to first, family or friends? Do you park this in the big parking lot at work, or do you park it out in the street? Where will you take your first trip in your new car? Who's going to wash it when you get it home, you or the kids? We can force the mental ownership by asking the right question. Now, when we talk about investigating, almost all of our investigative questions become mental ownership questions. They become involvement questions. Bob, when you use this for business, do you ride by yourself or carry people with you? I believe the mental process he has to go through is drive down the road, mentally picture somebody in the car with me or nobody. And he does his little mental picture and he says, I'm going to carry people with me, clients or friends. And either puts a friend in the seat with him or a client in the seat with him. Almost all of your investigative questions become involvement questions. And almost all of them, if you look through this page later, why don't you check the ones that are investigative questions, and when you ask involvement questions or investigative questions, try to make sure they're all either-or questions. Number 4 on page 39 is the sharp angle question. It's the sharp angle question. Now, we use a sharp angle question either as a question or a close. Let's use it as a question. We use it to turn their questions the customer asks us into commitments to purchase. We use these to turn their questions into commitments. These little check marks, we want as many of these little check marks as we can get. We want as many positive responses as we can get from the customer. In fact, we can use these to get the check marks, or we can use them to sell the car. Let's go out on the lot yesterday. Yesterday on the lot, let's keep score here and see what happens. We got the salesperson, we got the customer. Yesterday on the lot, the customer came and they said, do these things come in white? Do you have one of these in white? Or do these things come in white? How did you respond yesterday? I said, of course. Yeah, well, they come in white, no problem. They were out there on the lot, or a different customer came on the lot and said, do you guys have 48-month financing? And you said, oh, sure, yeah, we got that. Yesterday on the lot, the customer said, oh, I love this car, it's perfect. Problem is, we're moving. We're not moving till next Saturday. I don't have a place to park it. If I bought it today, could you guys hold it for me till next Saturday? And you said, oh, sure, no problem. No problem. Yeah, we'll do that. I'm confused. I thought we were supposed to get the little check marks. Looks like the customer's getting all the check marks. Looks like they're getting all the commitments from us. We need to change this around a little bit. Now, you don't respond with a question to every question you get. Of course not. That would create resistance. But when the customer said, do these things come in white? What should we have said? Were you looking for a white one? Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were looking for a white one. You could turn that into an either-or question. Bob, were you looking for a white car for yourself or somebody else? No, I was looking for one for me. Now we've got the commitment. Do these things, do you have 48-month financing? Were you looking specifically for 48 or something a little longer, a little shorter? Well, we don't know. We just wondered if you all stretched it out that far. Now we've got a commitment from the customer. This one, we missed an opportunity to sell. I like the car, it's perfect, but I don't have a place to park it till next Saturday. Can I buy it today and you guys keep it till Saturday? Instead of saying sure and getting nothing, how about, whoa, Bob, normally my manager doesn't like us to do that. If I can get them to agree to do the paperwork now, you guys drive it around this afternoon, bring it back here and park it for a week. If I can get them to do that, can we go ahead and take care of the paperwork and get you guys out of here so you can get started packing so you can move? Oh, sure, if you'll do that, we'll take it. You went from a giving them a commitment to putting a sold sign on the windshield, simply because you turned the question back around with a sharp angle question. And again, we'll talk more about all of these. Page 40. Your assumptive statements, your assumptive questions, and your assumptive closes. Statements, questions, and closes. Every time you say something positive, 5A, top of page 40, use an assumptive statement to build value. Every time you say something positive, just make a positive statement. You're going to love your truck. That adds a little bit of value. This thing gets great gas mileage. You're going to love it. This will handle all your business trips. This is going to be great on those vacations you guys take. Those positive statements add value. So you want to fill your presentation with as many positive statements as you can. Now, 5B, to build even more value, add a question to it. Make a positive statement, add a question. Or you can put the question up front. Won't this be fun driving on those windy mountain roads? Showing this off to all your friends will be fun, won't it? This truck's going to be great on those windy mountain roads, won't it? This will handle all your business needs, won't it? So we can put the question up front, won't this be fun on those windy mountain roads when you guys take those trips? Yeah. So positive statement, add a question, and you build even more value. There's another thing that we need to learn to do with these. On page 41, we use an assumptive statement to set up a closing question. Remember, the closing question's the either-or. Before you ask an either-or closing question, you always need to make a positive statement. Sounds like we found the perfect car. Positive statement. How do you want it registered, your name or her name? This truck's going to handle all your business needs. You want to put the bumper on today or bring it in on Thursday? You guys are going to love your new car. Do you want to put that CD player in today or try to get it installed next week? Positive statement, either-or question. Is that clear? It's hard to tell from this side of the camera. Closing is easy if you lead up to it correctly. Everything you do, you want to lead to a close. Now, we're going to talk about a summary close later, a couple tapes from now. But just a basic summary close to lead you into a closing question, to an assumptive statement, closing question. You get back off a demonstration drive. Bob, that sure drove nice, didn't it? Yeah, it sure did. Let's use one of those involvement questions. Boy, won't it be fun showing this off to all your family and friends? Yeah, it sure will be. And this has the color and equipment you guys were looking for, doesn't it? Yeah, and I believe that seat was going to be comfortable on those long trips too, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bob, it sounds to me like we found the perfect car. How do you want it registered, in your name or her name? Short summary, lead into it with an assumptive statement, followed by an either-or question. Summary, check marks, assumptive statements, either-or questions, the involvement questions, and sharp angle questions. If you can get those 5 questions down, you need to practice, drill, and rehearse so much that these questions are just part of your normal speech habit. When somebody touches that leather upholstery and says, boy, that's nice, isn't it, should just pop out of your mouth without even thinking of it. They sit down in that seat and they get that smile on their face. You can see that it's comfortable. You need to just say, boy, isn't that comfortable. Won't this be great showing this off to all your friends? The isn't it, wouldn't it, couldn't it's need to come out. You also have to get in the habit of asking questions and supplying all the answers. Bob, who's the car going to be for? You or somebody else? Somebody else. Friend or a stranger? Oh, well, of course, it's my son. And how's he going to use it? To get back and forth to school? Has he got a little job? Well, he gets back and forth to school and he's working part-time. Great, he must be excited. Does he prefer a 5-speed or automatic? Either-or questions. Use your involvement questions to make them take mental ownership. Involvement questions, when he uses this for school, he's going to be proud of that, won't he? Yeah, absolutely. Almost all of your investigative questions become involvement questions. Sharp angle question, do these things come in white? Did you want one in white? The assumptive statements, questions, and closes. These 5 questions make up everything we're going to talk about from here on out. Whether we're talking about a technique to close a sale and get a commitment, whether we're talking about overcoming an objection, bypassing an objection, clarifying an objection, isolating objections, rephrasing objections. It doesn't matter what we're talking about in selling. The basis of all of it comes from these 5 questions. Practice, drill, and rehearse these. Have some fun. This is what your homework's about. And we'll talk more about your homework later. I hope you understand that telling isn't selling. I hope you see that there's a difference between presenting and persuading. If you just tell people things, it's going to be tough to close sales. If you ask your way to a sale, it's a piece of cake. It's a heck of a lot more fun when they come up to you afterwards and say, thanks for not pushing me into this. We appreciate you just letting us make our own decisions. It's kind of nice when you can turn around and smile and say, yeah, Bob, it was a lot more fun that way, wasn't it? I'll see you on the next tape, and we'll talk about the 5 methods to handle objections.
This concludes this segment of your training program. As Joe says, the key to your success in learning to close more sales and hold gross is to practice, drill, and rehearse the techniques he's giving you in this training series. And don't forget, be sure to complete the homework assignment for this tape before you go on to the next tape. Good luck on the quiz, too, and we'll see you in the next tape.